missing people, murders, serial killers, frauds, heists, and mysterious events. The most infamous true crime stories from around the world, told in 10 minutes. Find 10-Minute True Crime on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favourite podcast player.
Hello and welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige. Some of us have those neighbors who are a complete nightmare. They might be disrespectful, loud, combative, vulgar, menacing, and might even be involved in criminal activities. Today I'll be talking a lot about the Watt family. And they were terrible neighbors to have. But what happened inside of their home was even more chilling and inconceivable than anyone ever thought possible. Neighbors were terrified of the Watt family. One person who lived next door even installed a security camera because some of the family members were coming onto their property, tormenting the wife and female children of the household by peeping into their windows when the father wasn't home. One resident of the neighborhood said it was a life of hell for everyone around. Another person who lived in the neighborhood stated, "It was a constant nightmare, constant phoning up the police, officers doing nothing, the family living in fear. They would pick on the vulnerable more than anything else." Let's talk about vulnerable adults. People who grow up and want to belong somewhere, no matter what they may endure to feel accepted and loved. Vulnerable adults don't think like most grown-ups, and for the most part, have the minds of a child. They may not be able to protect themselves when it comes to actions of cruelty and abuse of all types. In some vulnerable adults, there are extensive functional impairments, which involves physical restrictions. This can be, but is not always, in conjunction with another functional impairment, which is psychological and intellectual. This has to do with the vulnerable adult's mood, ideas, awareness, decision-making, memory, and/or how they assimilate. This significantly weakens the person's judgment, how they act, and/or the capability to be entirely independent. There are different levels of cognitive impairment. And the result of having cognitive impairment, there is a higher risk of that individual being abused and exploited in every way imaginable. The victim in today's story was a vulnerable adult. Let's get started. When Michael Gilbert came into the world in 1982, the third of 5 children, his little life would be spent in an unstable home environment until he was put into the care of social workers. He would be in their care on and off throughout his childhood. When he was with his family, they moved around a lot. When Michael was around 11 years old in 1993, his sister claimed that he had sexually assaulted her. But the results of the investigation into her allegation was determined to be inconclusive. Michael was going to Halyard High School, where he was harassed daily. At the age of only 13, he had undergone a mastectomy, which is where they remove one or both breasts. By 1997, Michael was in trouble yet again. His mother went to the police and informed them that her son had sexually assaulted a boy. In 1998, Michael was living in a home for children, where he was also hounded and hassled, and his peers saw him as someone they could effortlessly control. In the children's home in 1998, he met James Watt, who will become an important part of this story. James was no stranger to the police. Michael had a few criminal convictions by the year 2000. He even spent time in prison and a young offenders institution. Feeling all alone in the world, emotionally neglected, Michael didn't have anyone to properly guide him through life, to give him good advice, and he sadly lacked common sense, and overall there was no one to help him develop mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Due to this, Michael was an at-risk kid who grew up to be a vulnerable adult. He was easily manipulated and trusted people too easily. He was basically thrown to the wolves early on as a child, and at this point, he clung to the only person he really knew. When Michael finally got out of the children's home, he stuck by James Watt's side and eventually began living with James and his family. The family members were James, his brothers Richard, Colin, and Robert, their mother Jennifer Smith Dennis, and their father Antonio Watt. Also close to the family was Natasha Oldfield, James's girlfriend, and Nicola Roberts, Richard's girlfriend. The Watt family had different homes in Luton, in the county of Bedfordshire, and would sometimes stay in one house for a period of time, then go to another house for a while. What vulnerable Michael did not know was that he was moving in with a family of monsters. The Watt family made him work as their slave. They would beat and torture him. Whenever his benefit money would come in, they would pocket it for themselves. The family kept to themselves, they didn't socialize with anyone, and were extremely private. They would change residences often, and most of them did not have jobs. They had pit bull mixed dogs and large lizards. They were known around Luton for their hostility, violent behavior, and illegal activities. Unbelievably, by 2001, the police had made a lot of visits to the Watts family home, and a lot in this case is 112 times. As it turned out, there were investigations that completely failed when it came to the abuse and torment that Michael was experiencing. In 2002, there was an assault reported by a family member of Michael's. They told the Bedfordshire police that Michael had been slashed with a knife and shot with a pellet gun by 3 of the Watt family members. However, when the police tried to conduct their investigation, their calls were never returned, and Michael did not go to the police for a meeting, likely because he could not. An abduction reported in 2007 by a close friend of Michael's wasn't looked into. When Michael and his friend were hanging out in Cambridge, James Watt pulled up, and Michael got into the car. It didn't feel right to Michael's friend, and he said that Michael seemed scared. So he called the police, begging them to find out where Michael was. However, not long after this, Michael was arrested on suspicion of rape, and he was interrogated by the police in Bedfordshire. During the questioning, he never said anything about being kidnapped, and the case was closed. After Michael was allowed to leave, he went to the Bedfordshire police and told them he had been kidnapped, but he told them that he would not be able to work with them and cooperate with an investigation. Seeing how dire his situation was, and being a vulnerable adult, he was probably terrified to get involved with an investigation, fearing what the family may do to him. Michael even outright told the police it may make it worse on him if he tried to help. His report of being abducted was not even told to the Cambridgeshire police. DNA did clear Michael from the rape allegations. Another incident occurred in 2008 in Lancashire. Michael was talking to his girlfriend's brother when he was taken by one of the Watts right outside of a job center. Michael sent text messages to his girlfriend's family members later, and they reported this kidnapping to police. The police went to Michael's girlfriend's home, and she told them everything she knew. Plus, she gave them Michael's phone number. Accidentally, the police wrote down the wrong number. So when they called, the person on the other line said they had no idea who Michael was. Since the police did not know that they had the wrong number, they figured it was Michael, just not wanting to cooperate with them, and they assumed he was not wanting to communicate with his girlfriend's family. The head of the IPCC, which is the Independent Police Complaints Commission, stated, quote, "We looked at specific allegations that the police did not investigate. 3 incidents involving Michael and the Watt family. We have found that on each occasion investigations had taken place, but were flawed due to misinformation, failures in communication, and human error." At the Watts family house of horrors, they would take out their cell phones and record the abuse as he was being struck with a baseball bat, shot with an air gun, stabbed, made to drink cups of his own urine, being sexually assaulted, and forced to stand in scorching water. That was not all. They would keep him chained to the bars under the bunk beds. Michael never argued or complained when this happened, as he was too scared. On one occasion, he was forced to fight a large exotic lizard until it attacked him with its tail. They would attach locking pliers to his testicles or penis, dragging him around like a dog on a leash. There were times where Michael was able to get out of there, such as those few instances mentioned prior, but the family would always locate him. They would use his national insurance number to track where his benefits were being sent. From there, they would go to that location and drag him back into what was essentially his torture chamber. There were a few times Michael left the home, but returned voluntarily. 18-year-old Natasha Oldfield was James Watt's significant other. She lived with the family during the early stages of Michael's abuse. She witnessed Michael being viciously attacked, and she said that she was being treated violently at that time as well. Michael would sleep on the floor in one of the bedrooms and would be shouted at for minor things such as not washing dishes, not cleaning the house, or not having a bath. He was always being slapped around the head or face for pointless reasons. The family members would snatch his pants down and sprayed his private parts with hairspray, then set his pubic hair on fire. They nearly killed him once when they assaulted Michael so badly that the back of his head and neck was described as being like a sponge. They would strip him of his clothes regularly so he wouldn't leave the house, beaten with a plank of wood studded with nails and cut with knives. They would handcuff his hands together and not unlock the cuffs until the next morning. The family warned Michael that if he ever even thought about going to the police, that they would beat the hell out of him and stab him. This episode is sponsored by Athletic Greens. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. There's less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. You'll get better sleep, better recovery, better mental clarity, and alertness. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free year of supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase at athleticgreens.com/emerging. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/EMERGING to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Michael experienced many assaults through the years for no apparent reason, other than for gratuitous violence and the family members' entertainment. He would always be placed in the trunk of their car wherever they went, and was stabbed in the leg with a dirty syringe during fishing trips. Members of the family often headbutted and seriously battered him, repeatedly punching him in the chest and stomach. At times they would even resort to taking a hammer to hit him when the punches and kicks didn't seem to be brutal enough. As he was made to stand in the boiling hot water on so many occasions, he was not able to wear shoes for months. During all this time, investigations were happening on and off, which, as I mentioned, were failing. The police reports claimed there were difficulties when it came to the police, social services, and other agencies attempting to communicate with Michael. The report by the ICPP said there were times they were receiving false information by social services, a general practitioner, and a hospital. Michael told them he went to the hospital, but the hospital claimed there were no records that stated he had been there. Social services even spoke to detectives, telling them Michael had made accusations in the past that were untrue. Due to this, the police did not believe Michael when he told them he was being harmed and brutalized by the Watt family. The IPCC even said they understood why detectives believed Michael lied about how he sustained his injuries. A horrible discovery was made. One report says by 2 fishermen, and another report says by 2 dog walkers. In the Blue Lagoon on May 10, 2009, under a stone from a patio wall was a bag. Inside of that bag was a decapitated body in the lagoon, but some body parts were not there. Sadly, the head and the other body parts of this mangled body would not be discovered until February of 2010 in another area of the Blue Lagoon. The cause of death was not exactly known, but the pathologist reported that the body parts were in an advanced state of decomposition, which made assessment of the internal organs and bruise marks more difficult. There was evidence that soft tissue had been cut with a sharp object, like a knife, but a saw, meat cleaver, or hatchet had been used to cut through the bone and sever the head. 3 stab wounds were found on the torso, and internal injuries to the stomach and intestines had been caused by people jumping on this person. The aorta artery had been pierced, and this would have been quite capable of causing death due to rapid internal bleeding. It could not be determined if the stab wounds had been inflicted before or after death, but the stab wound and the internal damage could have been capable of causing the death as well. This body was indeed Michael Gilbert. Detectives surmised that his death occurred between the 21st and 22nd of January 2009. The murder investigation was in full swing, and pretty soon the Watt family was finally caught and apprehended. One thing found during the investigation was Natasha's diary. One entry was titled Game Show Ideas. The game show was for people to come over and get paid for doing the following: £5 for a slap, £15 for a kick, £25 for a headbutt. Michael Gilbert ends up dead. In February of 2010, the trial of the Watt family began. This evil family had killed and dismembered Michael, then took a few bags, binding his dismembered torso, left forearm, hands, lower legs, and feet numerous times, and they used cling film to keep it all in place. Afterwards, they put his body in a prison bag and put the bag in James's car. Off to the Blue Lagoon they went to discard his headless body. His knees, right forearm, and head, as we know, were not discovered right away. It came out in court that towards the end of 2008, the family put a board of plywood across Michael's mouth, and they would do sit-ups on the board. They would also jump on his stomach. This would cause Michael to eventually not be able to control his bowels, which was also not acceptable to the Watt family, and they would batter him for it. Neighbors heard him screaming, but they were terrified of the family, and they didn't want to get involved with whatever was happening inside of that house. Richard Watt asked Michael once why he put up with all of it. He said Michael replied, "I love you a lot. You are my family." A few months later, in April, James, his girlfriend Natasha, and Richard's girlfriend Nicola were found guilty of the murder of Michael Gilbert. James's brothers Richard and Robert and their mother Jennifer were found guilty of familial homicide. All 6 of them were found guilty of perverting the course of justice, which is when someone stops justice from being served on themselves or other people. The father of the Watts brothers, Antonio, was acquitted for familial homicide and perverting the course of justice. Colin Watt, who is Richard, Robert, and James's brother, moved out of the house before the murder took place. Robert Watt called Colin to tell him what they had done to Michael, which made Colin break down and cry. Colin told the jury that things were only progressively getting worse with the abuse, and that he could no longer stomach it, so he left. He described to the court that the beatings were happening to Michael all throughout the day and night. By the time Colin moved out, Michael could barely crawl to even move around, and he was changing colors. James Watt is serving 36 years in prison. Natasha Oldfield is serving 18 years. Nicola Roberts is serving 15 years. Richard Watt was served 6 years, but in a turn of events in 2011, his sentence was changed to spend only 4 years in prison on an appeal since he assisted in convicting everyone and helped the police gather Michael's body parts that they were looking for. Robert Watt served 8 years, and their mother, Jennifer Smith Dennis, served 10. Addressing Richard's appeal and having his sentence reduced, Lord Justice Richards said, quote, "His assistance meant the remaining body parts were found. He also gave evidence against members of his immediate family and his girlfriend in extremely difficult circumstances." Because James was going to refer to life in prison as a, quote, badge of honor, the judge decided not to serve him that sentencing. The judge said that the case was grotesque and that Michael had died a cruel, lonely, and violent death. There was an investigation conducted by the Lagoon Safeguarding Vulnerable Adults Board, and they suggested that there should be changes in training and the sharing of details and information between agencies. Since their sentencing, James Watt, Natasha Oldfield, and Nicola Roberts have all appealed, and those appeals have been denied. Senior Investigating Officer Detective Chief Inspector John Humphreys said, quote, "I would say this is the worst case and most serious and long-standing series of abuse incidents that have led to someone's death that I have seen in 26 years. Michael's family was pleased with the verdict, but at the same time, Michael's brother Chrissy, who was 31 years old at the time, stated, quote, "It's been a traumatic time for our family, and nothing will bring Michael back. But let's hope this will save other people from violent behavior." Michael's mother, Rose White, who was 49 at the time, said she and the rest of their family always tried to help Michael, who would come see them every once in a while. She said, quote, "He was 26. He wasn't a baby. I did all a mother could do." She also said that he wasn't able to stand up for himself. Quote, "If Michael could have fought back just once and defended himself years ago when it started, the violence would have ended. It was like he was always an adolescent, even when he was a grown man." Chief Executive of the Lagoon Borough Council, Trevor Holden, said, quote, "While the report clearly states that professionals made the decisions expected of them and following legislative requirements at the time, the council and its partners are determined to learn the lessons from this serious case review. We have an action plan in place for each recommendation, which will help us improve services to the people of Lagoon, and we hope will also help shape policy on a national level. As an adult, Michael was not registered as a vulnerable adult because by law, he was deemed to have sufficient mental capacity to make his own decisions. The support that was offered 20 years ago for Michael in Lagoon and other children across the country is very different to the services today. In ending this episode, I want to read a poem Michael's mother wrote. It says, "He bid no one a last farewell. He raised his hand to no one. His spirit flew before we knew that from us had gone. I often sit and think of you and think of how you died. To think you could not say goodbye before you closed your eyes. This episode was a listener's suggestion from the UK who wants to remain anonymous. Thank you so much for bringing this case to my attention, and thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Until next time, please stay safe and take care.